What is happening in our brains when we strive for perfection? Chris and Jen explore how we are sold perfection everywhere we look, from the idolized families on TV and sitcoms to the curated pretty things on social media.
Perfectionism is just your brain trying to protect you. It's just using really bad strategies to do that. And
Thanks,
so,
brain.
Terrible strategies.
In today's episode, we're unpacking the perfection trap. From social media filters to high-stakes performance reviews, why do we strive for the unachievable? Chris and Jen discuss perfectionism as a coping strategy, how it differs from OCD, and how to finally find peace in being enough. It's time for real talk and gratitude. Let's get into it.
Welcome to Chris and Jen in the Morning.
Where self-care meets real life. I'm Chris.
And I'm Jen.
And today we're going to talk about this idea of being perfect because we're sold perfection everywhere. It's in those TV families, in the shows and sitcoms that we love. Maybe in our careers, you have to achieve a certain, status. And Lord knows social media is just all the pretty things in people's lives. Am I right?
I mean, not mine, but
most of others, yes,
Yeah.
probably. Well, Frank and I have been watching this show, and I keep hearing a similar lines that keep coming up in the narrative of the show. Things like, from the outside, they were the perfect family, or they seemed like they were the happiest person. And then it takes this turn of no one saw this coming. No one knew that they were going through this. And so it really got me thinking about this idea of obtaining perfection, because I mean, we've talked about it before where we know perfect is not achievable. That's not really and I think most people know that, yet we still try to obtain this perfection.
we do. Yeah. Sometimes, you think about that and then you write it in a card to somebody trying to give positive vibes saying I love you because you're not perfect, and then they're like, what are you saying? So welcome
Maybe
to my
I won't-
marriage.
Hi, we're getting
I
the
did
inside
that.
scoop here.
But if you've ever spent 45 minutes trying to choose a font or 2 hours and then you didn't even finish the project, welcome, because you're amongst friends here. We are going to talk about perfectionism, chasing perfection, what it really is, how it's different from OCD, although it's so commonly conflated for that.
Yep.
And then what's going on in our brain that's driving this, and how do we frame things up differently so that we can find happier moments.
Yeah.
I get to celebrate our successes, and so that the people who live with us maybe don't get quite so frustrated by us at times.
Yeah, agreed. But as always, let's start with our gratitude moments.
Let's do it. I can kick us off.
Sure, go for it.
I was thinking this morning, there's so much going on in the US right now, and it's heavy. It's heavy stuff. There's just so much tension. I know we keep saying that, but there is. And we're real people. And that is really tough. And so I was kind of having a little pity party for myself and getting lost in everything is just so sad and hard and heavy. And how am I going to do this gratitude moment? Because I don't even know, what do I even have to be grateful for in this moment? And then I heard myself and I said, okay, stop, Jen. That's exactly why we do this practice of gratitude. And so I made myself get quiet for a minute and just kind of let things surface to the top. And what I realized is it's really cold outside right now. And I take for granted the fact that I am inside a warm house. I have a warm bed to sleep in. I have a warm couch to sit on. I have a warm shower to shower in, however many times I would like to. And I just am extremely grateful for that. I think it's really important that we take those things that we so often take for granted and realize that not everybody does have that. So I'm incredibly grateful that I have a warm bed to sleep in. I have a warm couch to sit on. I have a warm shower to stand in, because at least I can draw some comfort from those things when I'm feeling like chaos is surrounding me.
Yeah. And look, that's the whole reason we do these gratitude moments, is to remind ourselves that there are those micro moments throughout our day that, we do simply gloss over, but
Yeah.
they actually are important and do make an impact. And they are things that if they were stripped away, all of a sudden we would want them. And so expressing the gratitude for those things, whether big things or small things, that's the whole purpose in doing gratitude moments.
It really is. So
So that's a good one.
if you struggle to find a gratitude moment, you're not alone. But the whole point in the practice of gratitude is to take ourselves from this focus of everything that's going wrong and get control back over our mindset and choose happiness for ourselves.
Well, and my gratitude moment is along those same lines. Like, it has been a lot. And, I try to manage my social media intake and my news
Uh,
intake because it really does impact me. I love to say I have big feelings. And so they do. It hits me harder. And like trying to manage those emotions is a lot. So I try to do my best. And whenever I see others who are posting things and expressing things, like, I try to show up for them in a way that feels authentic to myself, but also makes them feel seen and appreciated. And I had a friend who messaged me after I had commented on an Instagram story that they had posted, just expressing their frustration with everything going on in the world today. And it just reminded me that, like, we can be thousands of miles apart and still show up for one another
yeah.
in ways that we need to. And so that's my gratitude moment, is just the ability that we can still show up for one another
Yeah.
and see each other in times when it's just not always easy to know what to say or what to do. It's nice to know that others are along that journey.
Yeah. The times we live in now, it is, and the freedom that we have, it is easier to connect and show up for each other, whether we're in the same physical spot or not, which is great. So, really good gratitude moments.
Let's talk a little bit why we really chase this idea of perfection, and why many times it feels like we never really achieve it. And so therefore it doesn't feel like we've done enough. I don't know if
Yeah.
you can relate to that.
Well, you know that this is something I struggle with. I didn't know this about myself. I just thought that it was like how everybody thought, or I don't know. I don't know what I thought. I recall saying to one of my friends who I had used to work with, I was talking to her and I said this at one point, like, oh, I think like this is something that I struggle with. And she just is like, looks at me and she's like, are you like joking with me right now? Like,
Yeah.
duh, Jen, obviously. I was like, oh,
Well, when you say it like that, it seems like I should have known.
it seems like I should have noticed. But I think the reason that I didn't realize that is that it was always getting branded by other people to me about myself as something different. So, it was people basically telling me I needed to be careful of ego. And I thought, well, it doesn't feel so misunderstood and so not seen when they would say that, because like I don't think I'm the best. I feel like I've failed and I
Yeah.
can't even celebrate when I do well. And what they were seeing is like me thinking I could be perfect. And instead, all I was thinking is I'm just a failure no matter how hard I try. So it's not ego. This perfection, like chasing, it's not about ego. It's not about OCD or compulsions. It's like it shows up at work, it shows up at home, it shows up in the hobbies. Like Chris and I may or may not have had some moments as we have been like crafting some like visuals and stuff for the show. Oh my gosh, when we did our logo and we didn't even get it perfect.
Exactly.
Do you remember like a year ago when we did the Texas Bounce logo? We just were like, we can overthink something to death. It shows up like an overthinker. It shows up in all these different ways. And other people who don't understand what's going on or can't recognize it, I think often misperceive it. And what they don't realize is on the inside, you're just thinking, I'm not good enough. It's not good enough.
Yeah.
I have this note card. Oh, sorry. I have this note card that sits on my desk that I've shared before that says, I am enough. And as we were pulling this episode together, I realized, oh my God, this is exactly why this is the phrase that I need to have sitting in front of me all of the time, because I really struggle with this. Because no matter how much I succeed, It's
Yeah.
never enough.
Well, and it's interesting because when we started having this conversation about, this topic specifically, I remember I was trying to add like a time frame to it. Like when did we feel like we had to have like the perfect everything? Like when did that enter society? Was it whenever we got to see more into each other's lives through social media? Was it this idea of, depending on, what position you hold in a company, the expectation of the clothes you wear, the cars you drive, things like that. And you said something that was just very like just cut through it to me. And you're like, Chris, this has been happening since, the Middle Ages, like kings, queens, ladies of court, men of court. Like it has always been this way. Like people strive for this perfectionism because you believe that it obtains something for you. And as I was started to look a little bit more into this, I really liked this way it was framed up, which is perfectionism is when your worth gets tied to your performance. And then I'm like, well, then of course I'm always striving for perfection because I always want to be a top performer. Like, this is why I struggle.
Well, absolutely. It's like, at work in those situations where you win an award, but you're like top 10 instead of number one. And
Yeah.
you go, or top 50, not even top 10. And this was me last year where I was going, I won this award, which was like really cool. And I think the first thing I said is, "Oh my gosh, I failed. Like I'm only top 50." And that's so dumb. It was just but it's not because I think I can be the best. It's because I feel like if there was room to improve, then I failed. I was looking at what is this? Is this does it come from some kind of like OCD? Is something that you have? Is perfectionism like this thing that you have? It's not. It's a coping strategy that you learn. It's a way that you're framing up your thinking. It's a pattern or a rhythm. And some people are more predisposed to this just because they're the areas in their brain that are really sensitive to how well they're doing and that creating like control or that how in order everything is and that giving you the sense of stability or control. There's actually like an area in your brain that feeds that. And so some people are predisposed for that to be something that they are more in tune with. But when you sort of over lean in to those things, that's where this kind of perfection, chasing perfection becomes something that kind of robs you of
Right.
your happiness and your joy and your ability to celebrate. And it sometimes makes you rob other people of the opportunity to celebrate. And I know like I certainly have been that person robbing other people of the opportunity to celebrate because, you know, that's just showing up and doing what they should be doing. That's
Right.
it wasn't perfect. There were areas, opportunities to improve.
Well, and I think you saying that about like some people are predisposed to it, like I think that's a factor, but I also think at least here in Western education, like you do get a report card that tells you how good you are doing. When you graduate, you have the person who's the top of the class. There are reward mechanisms in place to reward people who are I'm not going to say obtaining perfection. That's not the right word, but they are the top. Like they have found their way to the top. And in some people's mind, not that I'm an overly competitive person, and I don't know if I really know super competitive people. But I think like that's where some of this potentially is coming from, right? Because it then becomes this comparison game, and then like I want the attention. I want the praise. Like, who doesn't want those things? And by the way, that award that you won with Top 50, you kicked butt. And I say that because it was a peer nominated thing. And whenever other people have to weigh in and they get to say who they believe the top people are, that is an award that cannot be bought. So I will applaud you for your top 50, and I will also wear it as a badge of honor for myself that I know someone who is in the top 50.
Thank you. Yeah. I mean, I think, oh my gosh, I failed, which is ridiculous. It is, I can acknowledge it's ridiculous. And yet I still struggle with that. And I think that's part of why we want to talk about this. This also shows up not just in how I feel about myself, but like, have you ever been in a situation where you've like organized the pantry, or you're on a journey to organize the pantry? You take everything out and then you start putting it back in. And then you're like, wait a second, this doesn't all fit here in a way that looks the best. And so you take it back out again. And, like 4 hours have gone by. The house is a complete mess. And you are ready to give up and you ask your partner for help because you're in over your head. Because if you can relate to that, then like I can relate to you.
I was just going to say that seems like awfully specific example that you're using. But it's true. It is true. Like that is like when you set that intention, right? Like, oh, I just want to go organize the pantry. And then you get in and then it's like, all right, well, for me to really do it right, I have to pull it all out. And then if you're like me, you put things into categories and then you're like, oh, I'll go put this over here because there's not enough space. And then you get it all, you think you're done, and then you find the stuff that was not in the obvious place and you're like, ah!
And so then that starts to like stress you out. And then you go on this journey of stress and then enter more cortisol into the body because that's what the brain does. It's like, oh, we need more cortisol. And then that just feeds this pattern. It's like a rhythm or a cycle. So it's not just about like this fear of threat of other people judging you and not being enough, which is part of it. But then there is also this like things feel out of control. And my way of dealing with that is to try and have control. And I think these are like signs that maybe you should stop kind of what you're doing and start reflecting on, why is this so important to me? Why is it that I feel this way? And I hate those questions because you just have to really listen to what's really going on, how you feel. And I would much rather think about how I think than how I feel. But the journey to happiness is like paved by understanding how you feel. So apparently that's the path we're on.
Apparently that is the path that we have decided to take.
That's the path that we're on. So it is different, though, than OCD. And people do say a lot of times, oh my gosh, I have OCD, all of those things. And so we just wanted to take 1 minute to talk about how it's different. And like, I think it's really healthy for all of us to stop conflating those things. So like when you have OCD, and I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a therapist, I'm not like a licensed professional. So I just want to be very clear about that. But when you have OCD, that's a clinical diagnosis that involves these intrusive thoughts and compulsions. And you can't really like rationalize why you think doing something is going to produce an outcome.
Right.
And so while, there may be some things that I do or have done in the past that are OCD tendencies that are kind of like a coping strategy that I know aren't rational to just kind of give myself, a little bit of peace of mind, it's definitely different. And so this perfectionism or chasing perfect, it's a pattern or a coping strategy that you're using to try and give yourself this sense of control, or to try and even control how other people think about you or how they view you. It's like a symptom of, how you're like lacking this value in yourself. My shirt, by the way, says everyone has value. So if you're not watching, but you're just listening, I definitely believe that.
And I will say, I am definitely someone who connects things better whenever like there's been real life experiences that I can like hear stories about. And I actually have a friend who I did not know at the time. She confided in me. She was really frustrated with some stuff that was happening at work. And just one of the things she said, because she was just at this moment of like peak stress, and she's like, and I'm really tired of hearing people talk about how they're OCD about making sure that bullet points on a deck are right, because I have OCD. And let me tell you, that is not, you're wanting a perfect deck with the all the bullet points in a row. If you can walk away from that deck, if you can go do other things and that not ruin your day, then that is not OCD. And like she shared that with me, and that was like the first time that I had heard from someone who shared that with me. And so I share that here because I do think it is important that is a journey, and it is like it does stop people from being able to move on, move to the next thing. And to me, it's important to understand that when people are on this journey that we just talked about, whenever things are conflated and sometimes used in such a way that it kind of minimizes, even though that may not be our intent of using the word, it doesn't always land well with people who are really struggling or trying to work through that. I did think that it was a very important balance that we wanted to bring to this. There is a difference between perfectionism and OCD.
Yeah, absolutely. I was just looking for, there's this book series that I read. The series is the Knitting in the City series by Penny Reed. And there's one of the books in there that focuses on a main character who has OCD. And what I love about what Penny Reed does with a lot of her books is, and especially in this series, she takes several main female characters that are neurodivergent. And then you sit kind of first person in that person's seat as they drive through life. And you get this pretty realistic experience of what it's like to live thinking a little bit differently than how
Yeah.
you might think. Or maybe you start to see yourself showing up and it kind of normalizes. Maybe this isn't the standard version, but it's not, I'm not weird. Or, okay, well, I am weird, but not because of that. Um, I loved the Knitting in the City series. I thought it was great. I thought it was just a really fun series. And I also really loved the characters that she brought to life there. So just for me, that was a great way to start giving me some perspective about what OCD really is and what it's like to live with that, even though I kind of knew about it, just more of that first person perspective in daily life, just like you shared with, your friend at work.
Yeah.
So when it does come to how people show up, like from, or how chasing perfect kind of shows up and impacts us. And, I kind of think like, why are we talking about this? Why is this something that we want to like work on or fix? And I always come back to, well, because it's robbing me and the people around me from some of the happiness that we could
Yeah.
have. And so, kind of thinking about how does this actually show up? How does it affect then how I show up? Because this is something that I'm struggling with. And I don't know about you, Chris, but for me, I see this as kind of having two sort of paths in how you take action. So there are some people that struggle with this, like need for something to be perfect. And they then go down this path of avoiding because they feel like, well, if it can't be perfect, then there's no point in trying because I've already failed.
Yeah.
And so this is something that I have known people who have struggled with, and they just really struggle to get started, or they feel like they would do things or they want to go after things, but because I can't get straight A's, why am I even going to try? And they're robbing themselves from this opportunity of the experience. And we always say cliche things like it's about the climb or, the journey or, and I like say those things because they are true. And it's important to remind ourselves, but like it's not always, we're not doing it so that we can prove that we're enough by attaining the most optimal result. And so if you find yourself avoiding doing things, not because you wouldn't enjoy them, or you don't want to do them, or you don't know that they're important for you to do, or whatever it is, but because you just feel like you can't get it at 100%. And so why try? This might be something that you should think about. You might start thinking about what it is that you're missing out on. This also can show up in like I get clutter paralysis. So, I mean, I guess this can apply to me at times because it's like I'd love to clean my desk off. I talk every week about how I feel like my desk is a mess, and yet I get so stuck at where do I put things and where does it. That might be a little bit more of my like ADHD, spatial issues, but it absolutely can give you this like clutter paralysis,
Yeah.
or you stall out on projects or things like that. And then there is the hard charger kind. They go all in and then they feel so disappointed when they had this expectation that only perfect is the best. And they put in all of this effort and they can't celebrate any success or satisfaction. So just like we talked about with the award, which I am still working on, or, all have, if you've been listening, heard about my thoughts, feelings, and opinions on like how performance reviews are often handled and like how I've experienced other people handle them. It's like you can do really well, but all you hear is the ways that, you weren't enough.
Yeah.
And that's really not the point of those conversations. So just thinking about, if that feels like it relates to you, it steals kind of some of your joy and your ability to celebrate. And then it sucks it out of the people around you
Yeah.
as well. And so, not that you should feel bad about that, just that's why we're talking about this.
Exactly. And like when I look back on my life, I think when I was younger, I probably fell more into that avoider space. When something was new or different, if I couldn't wrap my mind all around it and truly like figure out like how to get from point A to point Z clean and clearly, I avoided it. And then somewhere along my path, I learned how, well, you just start moving, you start making traction, you do things. And then I think this is like where I fall into the Chargers area now. Where I'm like, yes, we can do anything. And then I'm like at step D and I'm just like, okay, maybe
Yeah.
we made a mistake.
I had a debate coach in high school that said to me, Jen, what you lack in talent, you make up for in tenacity or effort. He's like, you're very persistent. And I'm like, I've always thought, are you telling me I'm not talented, or are you telling me I'm a hard worker, or are you telling me both or neither? What am I supposed to take away from this? I'm still not quite sure, but I'm going to choose to believe that that was just a compliment about my effort.
Yeah, that's how I would take it.
Like, I used to have it sitting next to me. I still have it. When we worked together, somebody put a sign up on my door with my face and a really ridiculous face that I was making. I think it was the face from when we tried that gluten-free cupcake from Magnolia.
Yeah. Yep,
Not
that
so good.
definitely gets a special look.
And so my face on a hurdler in the Olympics. And at the bottom, it read, Jen, I'll get it done gear. And that is so true. Like, just I'm going to barrel in and figure out how to get something done. And I'm going to delegate reading the instructions to somebody else. I mean, I'm a lifelong delegator. I used to think I was bad at delegating. No, I delegate. And then I also want to come in and make it all perfect. Like, do it as best as
Right.
possible.
But I do think like that's where it's really important to understand, like as you are going through this, like we talked about this being a journey just about in every episode we have where we talk about like, we're not perfect at this either. We're still working at this ourselves. I would say there are still many times in my life where this is where I'm at. And if I'm feeling a certain level of stress or anxiety about something, if I pick up like I'm avoiding something, then I like sit down and have like that conversation. Okay, why are we avoiding this? Why does it feel uncomfortable? What are we? And then like I start to try and get my mind right. But again, it's like one of those things, why are we talking about this? Well, it's one of those things that once we are aware of it, we can start to figure out how to navigate around it. And I do think there are like this journey you and I have been on with this podcast. We're picking up on each other's signals now as well, where we can see where there's discomfort, where we see that there's, we're like, oh, you're not really showing up in the way that you usually, what's going on? And we can have that conversation. We can figure out how we better support one another through those times. But it is like, once you know about it, you can start putting some framework, some traction, and figuring out how you start to work through it. Because as much as I would love to say I'm always seeking perfection, I also know that perfection is not obtainable.
It's not. It really isn't attainable. And so if you can't celebrate the wins along the way, then, like, what's the point? And I know that intellectually. I just haven't quite figured that out. Like, my nervous system hasn't quite caught up with that yet. And I mean, I think the note card that I have is the perfect demonstration of that. I know that I struggle with this idea of trying to chase perfect. I know that it's not healthy for me. Like, all of those logical things have worked out. I know that I am enough, or at least intellectually, even though I often do not feel that way. I often feel like I am a complete failure and that people will not think I am enough, or do not think I am enough, or can not, are just pretending to like me or all of those things. Like, but that's so real, right? And I think more people, not everybody struggles with that, obviously, but I think more people struggle with that than we realize. And I know that when I have told people that in the past, they just look at me really confused because they're like, but you seem so confident. And I'm like, well, I must be really good at masking this because on the inside, that is not what's going on at all. And so, like, I would just say people are good at faking it.
Absolutely. But I think like this goes back to whenever you are making connections with people, like learn about them, learn their stories, like be genuinely curious about them. Because like that friend that I was talking about, I had known her for years,
And you
had
had
no
idea.
idea.
Yeah,
And
because we
then
hide
just
it. We hide these things, right? And, I have to say, like, we'll talk about what we can do. So we talked about like, okay, what is this? How is it different from other things? Like, why is it that we would want to even focus on, this being something that we create a different path than the one that we're on? And then like, how does it show up? What does it look like? We'll talk about like what you can practically do, but I do just want to take a second and acknowledge, like, if you're waiting to feel like you finally understand it or intellectually, or you've connected with it, from a stress response standpoint or internally or in your feelings or whatever, um, to take action, then, you're always going to get stuck waiting. And we started this podcast a year ago. We were terrified. I think that is not an overstatement.
Not at all.
We I for one had to hold a anxiety chicken in order to have a headshot done, and that wasn't even video, that was just a picture. Still get picture anxiety, by the way, probably always will. But like, I could not sit in front of a camera and like talk, let alone like share things I don't share with people normally, like how I feel on the inside. I don't even share that with myself half the time. So but we did this anyways, and we not only recorded, but we published and we put it out there, and then we told people about it. And I heard myself when we were telling people about it at first, like kind of almost like apologizing for saying listen to our podcast, and then going, wait a second, that's not how I want to show up. And as we've been doing it, like, it's something that we've gotten better at. And I think that what we've had to push ourselves to do, we wouldn't still be doing this a year later if we weren't working on this and figuring it out, is how do we celebrate the milestones to be able to put at least one thing in our life in practice to say, we know that we're doing this not as people who have reached a mastery level skill, but as people who've never done this before and don't have this skill.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it anyways. And we're just going to celebrate as we get better. And we'll look at where we want to improve because that's how you get better. But we'll do it holding each other accountable to set the judgment aside.
Yeah.
And I do think I never could have done this without the two of you, you and Ace. Like, for us to do this together and make this a safe space for us to like pick each other up when we can't pick ourselves up and say, you know what, you actually did a really great job. Look at how far we've come. I say, like, don't wait until you are perfect at figuring out how to not chase perfect to jump right in and start working on it. Sometimes you just have to get really uncomfortable and put it into practice. How I feel, change happens outside your comfort zone. So if you're trying to work on something and you're uncomfortable, then you're probably doing something right.
Right. And you may be listening to this thinking like, oh, well, I don't really relate to this. But like, I've been on the journey of like where I feel confident in some areas, but then I approach a new thing. And again, I'm like, why am I feeling this anxiety? Why am I avoiding this? Why am I not giving this the time and attention it deserves? And a lot of it is because like this idea of I want to be perfect at it. I want it to be like 100%, which by the way, no one has ever asked for any to be delivered perfect or flawlessly. Like, we're human beings.
That's not true. I mean, we definitely have been asked to deliver flawless execution at work.
Yes, but to me, that is saying that I want the best out of you. When someone says something like that, but anytime anyone says something about meaning to deliver something perfect, they go ahead and reset the expectation immediately.
Yes. So
because
healthy.
Let's be very clear. I am good at what I do, but I am only human.
And I think that's a boundaries conversation that we're actually going to have. That's something that we have planned. So stay tuned to the end and we'll talk about an upcoming conversation and how you can participate along with us in that. I know boundaries, but it'll actually be fun, I think. Well, Chris thinks. Chris loves it.
Look, boundaries are good. I love them. I'm a supporter of them. I've recently learned and built some new ones, and I feel like I'm thriving.
Yeah. I mean, really, honestly, actually, I feel like it's been a really good, I love that you've come along on the journey too, because then I get to watch you and learn from that instead of just having to figure it all out on my own.
Yeah.
So that's been great. So if you have found yourself reorganizing the pantry for 4 hours and the house is messier than it was to begin with, or, you won an award and yet you felt like it just wasn't enough, or, your life slogan is if you're not first, you're last, in the words of, who was it, Ricky LaBobby, then here are some things to understand about what is going on inside of our brain when this is happening. So we know that perfectionism or chasing perfect can be a threat response. There's like this error monitoring system that reacts more strongly to mistakes sometimes. And sometimes it's like how you were brought up. Sometimes it's just that you're more predisposed to that because that part of your brain is bigger. And then, the way that we're brought up. But this is not it's not a defect. It's a learned activity that we use, and sometimes for our benefit. But when it becomes like this problem where it sort of steals our joy, that's when we have to do something about it. So if you're seeing judgment or failure as dangerous, like the brain is registering that as a threat. And what do we know about our brains when we go into threat response mode? We know that the amygdala kicks in. We know that we all of a sudden get hyper focused on the threat, and you actually lose capacity to think about other things that are not the threat.
Yeah.
So just like, when somebody's giving you feedback and they do the sandwich thing, you don't hear the positive at the end because you're just hyper focused on the threat. And that's a good sign that you're in amygdala hijack.
I mean, we've talked about this countless number of times, and I'm just having this aha moment. Like, this is probably why whenever I'm going through, like, planning something, I try to go through every possible scenario I can think of.
Yeah, and that's the second thing, is that the brain really craves certainty. Yeah. And so perfectionism or chasing perfect is this control attempt that kind of backfires on us. So what I've said about parenting, I think applies to most of life in general, but like if you think that you are in control of the situation, you've got it all wrong. The trick is just not letting them know that that you're not in control.
But I think that's such a good thing just to like keep top of mind. Like, we can do all of this that we want. Like, we can plan for certain things. We can understand how like the biology of it works. But these responses are like happening without us even knowing. And so it's not about trying to stop them or hijack them. Like, it's more about being aware of what is happening. So that way we can set ourselves up in those moments instead of like reacting. Maybe it's can I have a pause, or I need to step away, just to let all of that stuff process.
Yeah.
And then you can come back.
Perfectionism is just your brain trying to protect you. It's just using really bad strategies to do that. And
thanks, brain.
Terrible strategies. The third kind of way that your brain is leaning into, or reason, or what's happening inside your brain when perfectionism is something that's going on within you, is this cortisol stress hormone. So when your body is stressed, cortisol increases, and then it's like more stress, and it becomes this like cycle, and that spikes higher when evaluation is involved. And so if you are not doing the work to say, I am enough no matter what, so I am striving to have other people validate me, and I need to be perfect so that I can be enough, even though I can't be perfect and I already know that, it's that you're just feeding yourself more of this like cortisone cycle. If you get 10 things right and you have one flaw, your brain just zooms in on that flaw and is like, man, you failed. And I can relate to that. Or if you lay in bed and you're replaying mistakes over and over in your head, or, you're thinking about that thing that you said that no one else remembers, but you said, and then you text the person and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I must have offended you. I said this. The next morning they wake up because you were texting them at 3 a.m. and they say, oh my gosh, no, I wasn't. Did you even say that? And then you just made it super awkward. If you can relate to that.
Again, I feel like that's a very specific example, but it just goes to show it really happens.
It really does happen, guys. So we talked about the cost. It steals our happiness. It steals our joy. It steals happiness from other people around us. It creates procrastination. You end up living in this kind of chronic stress mode. And like we talked about the brain having these chemicals going on. You actually live with your system out of balance. Your system learns how to be out of balance. And then you have this chronic stress, which causes physical pain. It causes heart issues, early death from heart attack. Like it can cause palsy, all of these things that are not good for you. So this is, if you can relate to some of these things, this is why we're talking about this, because it's really important to be able to get the most out of life. It causes strain on relationships. When you are first married and your partner folds the towels and you are really upset that they're not folded as neatly in perfect little rows because you're trying to control one thing and it just can't be right. So you refold the towels. And then you have to pay somebody to tell you to stop refolding the towels if you want them folded, or just fold them yourself. It creates strain on relationships.
Yeah.
Again, very specific example.
But I do think like that's the point in all of this is like this stuff can, I'd say, creep in, but it's not like, because these are things that we've learned early on in life, like we aren't aware of them. Like how much of our day do we just move through our life not truly understanding what's pulling us, what's telling us, what's pushing us? And that's where like I end up, over rotating on a conversation that I had like at 9 a.m. when I'm trying to go to bed at midnight and just thinking about that conversation over and over again in my head. And it's like,
you do it too. You just don't text the person.
Absolutely. Well, it depends on the person. If it's you, I'm absolutely going to text you.
We're better at boundaries. Again, I see. We're back to boundaries.
But I do think it's really interesting because as I've gotten older, like I'm noticing these things, like how they impact my life in different ways and like how they're manifesting physically within me. And what I have found is whenever my stress level spikes like so high and out of control, I get an eye sty. So like if I ever I remember for our honeymoon, we were in a totally different, like we're on the other side of the world. I get a wake up to this message on my phone that like just sent me like to the highest peaks of stress level. And then for the rest of the week, I like developed this huge eye sty. It was not cute. It was painful. And here I am like, trying to enjoy my my
I hate that, but I still
cruise.
think you're cute.
Thanks. But I do think like it's sometimes like these things, the way that they manifest and the way that they start showing up in our lives can be very like obvious, and then others are very like subtle. And so when you take that time to kind of reflect and think about those, like what's happening in my life, why is this happen, like you're taking that time. And again, like I don't know if this is something necessarily that we are taught, is like it's important that we make time for ourselves. Like we have this podcast about self-care for a reason.
Yeah.
Because you have to do some reflection to understand what is happening within you. So that way, if you truly want to try and change trajectories or show up in a different way, that's not magic thinking that's going to get you there. It takes work, and it takes acknowledgement and putting in the work to make it happen.
It does. Like burnout is not inevitable. Relationship burnout, life burnout, work burnout, it's not inevitable. You can avoid it. You can come back from it. So the way, like, let's just talk about the ways that we can do that. Like what's one of the first ways that you can avoid this?
We've talked about this before, and I love that we can bring this back up, is name it to tame it. And this is one of those things, like understanding, why am I feeling compelled to do this? Why am I seeking this? am I truly seeking perfection? Is perfection necessary? Is this something that needs to be perfect? Because if not, why continue at this? Like, if good enough is good enough.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm a big fan of just like awareness, create awareness. Awareness is the first step to anything. And so I think that's what Name It to Tame It is all about. It's just first you got to like actually acknowledge that this is something that's going on. And to part of the reason that Chris and I are sharing with you some of our own personal kind of closely held feelings about like how this feels for us is because we had to be on this journey to realize that this is something that we were struggling with because we were finding that it was stealing some of our joy and the joy of people around us and creating burnout and all of these things. And so you just don't have to live that way. So I think awareness is really important. One of the other things that I try to do is when I am aware that this is something that I'm doing, or when like you make me aware, or my husband makes me aware in a really nice, gentle way, so I don't snap anybody's head off. Like trying to trade getting perfect for what's going to be effective. And Ace actually, and I think I say this a lot. We're like the yin to each other's yang. So when we were designing, like finishing up the design for season 2 cover art for the show, and that, went on our business cards and all this stuff, it was like, all the way over here trying to do all the things and I'm getting lost in like this perfection, whatever. And Ace just comes in and he like looks at it from a different angle and is like, I mean, I think this is good enough. Like, stop screwing around with this. And here I am, like, he leaves and we've already landed on it. And I'm like, well, I need to try 5 other things before I decide that this is what's right. But like hearing him as he walks away go, like, this is good. This is going to work, or like with the fonts, like usually what ends up happening is I'm picking a font for a design for like a shirt or, a graphic or something that we're doing. It's one of the first 2 or 3 fonts that I pick that I end up using, but I will look at all 80 fonts. Do you remember the time I made you look at them all with me?
I sure do. I
loved that,
certainly
didn't you?
do. Whenever we had 5 fonts that almost looked exactly the same, and you're like, but don't you like this one more than that one? I'm like, I can't tell a difference.
That was, how long did that take us? I don't know about time here. Was it like an hour? Was it more than an hour?
It was like an hour and a half for sure.
It's time you're never going to get back in your life. We totally could have done so many other things with that hour and a half.
But I think in those scenarios, you also have to understand like that, like where analysis paralysis, there's so many options, you can't make a decision. I do think that there's an other side of that is like, there are so many options. I have to look at all of them to make sure that I choose the right one. Because what if there was a better one, the perfect
exactly.
one?
Well, and that's like why I get this font. And I love that other people have said that this is something they struggle with too, because I'm like, oh, okay, good. Okay. So this is like relatable. This is a thing. So I've started starring my favorite fonts in Canva so that I just don't even go down this journey. It's good enough, Jen. Like, when you buy a shirt, do you like sit there and go, oh my God, was that the perfect font? No, it's just the general like look and feel and whatever. And so Don't be so critical of yourself when you're in the creative process. So ask yourself, does this work? Does it meet the goal? Is spending another hour and a half on this going to get me marginally better? Or like, will it really make a difference?
Yeah.
And I think going through that font experience with you and dragging you along with me for an hour and a half and then going like, that wasn't fun for me.
Was that fun for you?
It wasn't fun for me, but I did it, but it wasn't fun for me. So I think about that now when I'm on the journey and I have to tell myself, okay, like you really want to sit here and look at every single fun option that's available to you, but you don't like have to. So just go with what feels right. Once it feels right, move on.
Right. So the first tool was the awareness idea and the name it to tame it. The second is this idea of trading perfect for effective, because this seeking perfection is endless.
Yeah.
As is apparently the font list in Canva.
Yes.
So, effective is finishable. We can obtain it.
It is. So then there's the 80% rule, which is, I think, very much a different way to say effective is enough, right? Like, but I use this at work a lot to kind of put myself into pragmatic brain where I go like 80/20 rule. Like, I got to get, 80% of it is really what matters the most. Not that I am going to deliver something that's not going to meet the needs. But like if you're trying to meet the needs for every single possible scenario, then you're stuck and you're not going to deliver. And so this is something that I learned very early on to try and accommodate this is okay, first we just have to take care of the 80% and then we have our plan for how we deal with the outliers. But that's a strategy that you can use if it fits. I mean, it's not applicable in all scenarios. It's certainly, I think, a handy tool.
Yeah, I mean, I work in a creative space, and it's so interesting to hear the two different sides of this argument. Like, good is good enough. And it's like, no, we're avoiding that. We're not using that. It has to be the best. It has to be perfect. And it's like, but then you have people who get on this loop and then like, we have to make sure, like, is this right? Does this need to move like, a quarter of a centimeter? And so it's like you're chasing this and
well, who decides what's perfect anyway? It's like oftentimes it's like this really ambiguous, like there's not one exact right answer. Yet we back ourselves into thinking that there is.
And so I just think like it's interesting how you put it, like in certain circumstances this is applicable, in others it may not be. I certainly don't want a doctor coming to me and saying like 80% good enough, like that.
No. We can't be. No. That's exactly. But so you have to think about like, does the 80% rule work for your scenario? But in most of the things that we are doing, like 80% completed beats 100% imagined.
Oh, I love that saying.
Yeah, like just get it out there and then you can fine tune it when you have time. And that really for me actually has been a great way to help myself figure out whether 80% was enough or not.
Yeah.
Because all of a sudden once it's down and done and there, then you go, okay, well this is not good enough to deliver. Or you go, okay, I have like this really long list of stuff that like only 30% of which I'm going to actually cross off before I lose the sticky note forever. But it goes on a different list. But like, now I need to focus on something else because this was enough. So I think it's a good way to kind of get yourself unstuck when you are feeling stuck by trying to chase the perfect.
Yeah. I love this idea of progress for progress praise. And when I look back at the time that you and I worked together, I think you did this very well with the team. It's this idea of, as you're working on a big project or like it could be something small, but there's a lot of steps to it. It's celebrating as you are achieving and hitting those milestones, which is why you do put milestones. So that way, one, you're all working towards a common goal or a milestone. And then once you get there, you celebrate, you got there, and let's quickly regroup and make sure that we have all of our I's dotted, T's crossed before we start on to that next one. So I think creating that space for yourself and to celebrate those things so that way your brain gets those positive endorphins running as well, I think are so important.
Yeah, and so that you don't burn your team out. I mean, or the other people you're working with or your partner or, whatever situation this is applicable to, but like just because you are good to hard charge for forever does not mean that everybody else is. So it probably doesn't mean that you are either. It probably means that you're just not listening to yourself. So
but I think the
person that crosses the finish line and then collapses afterwards.
Exactly. I mean, I certainly don't want to be that person, but also if I'm running, everyone else should be running. But that's a different episode. I really like this idea though, specifically for this progress praise, is to say it out loud, because I do think there is something much more powerful in saying it versus just thinking about it. And like I've said before, the voices in my head are very loud. So like I can speak very loudly to myself in those things, but then it's those opportunities whenever I say things out loud, my brain processes it differently. And I think that goes for everyone.
You're using more sensory outputs, inputs, all of the things in order to kind of give yourself signals. And I think that's really important. I don't know why I just keep doing this with my hands.
I understand. It makes
You
sense.
get it, right? You get it. But no, I think this is something that I am better at planning out and doing with others than I am with myself. I think that I'm not always naturally good at doing this with others. It does take intention on my part, because naturally what I would do is just say, okay, focus on the task at hand, not the feelings.
Yeah.
You know, next, next, next. But this is what I do to myself. And so I know I was telling you in ACE the other day that, like, I feel like I'm terrible at making to-do lists. And I feel like I'm terrible at making to-do lists because I write down something that is like an entire thing. It's not all the milestones. And then I feel like I can't cross it off until it is perfect. And so I never cross it off. And so I end up going, oh my God, like I have done a lot. And other people wouldn't argue with that. Like I've done a lot. And yet a- like I have one of 10 things crossed off. Maybe some of it was because I did stuff that wasn't on the list, but I worked on all these things, and yet like I'm not getting them done.
Yeah.
And that just feels like defeating, right? You get exhausted. That leads to burnout. And so I think with myself, what I'm learning is I need to do a better job of setting myself up for success, not by, okay, let's get it perfect and get every single milestone written down, because that's just too much. But you know, like when you're setting out to say, here's what I want to accomplish, start thinking in terms of milestones instead of just the end result, because then you'll be able to get to a place where you feel like, okay, I've crossed this off, I can move to the next. It also helps you to keep like from spinning on something until you get it perfect, because you're signaling to yourself, okay, it's time to go to the next step.
It's very true.
Yeah. So I mean, I think those are the big ways that you know, we can start to take this idea of chasing perfect and reframe them into you know, what's the cost benefit, what's good enough. Just one more thing I want to mention that I use, and I actually have this also on a note card on my desk. It's keep knocking everything over. I don't know why I always do this because you can't really see, but it's the time quality cost triangle. Somebody years ago gave me this like framework of time, cost, quality. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's so good. So I use it all the time. But like, if you think about, I can have two of these three things that I prioritize. It doesn't mean you can't pay attention to all three. You kind of have to, but you can prioritize two of the three and say they are the most important. So if you want to do something the fastest and you want it the highest quality, you're just going to have to pay more. If you want to do something the cheapest and you want to have the highest quality, it's going to take you a long time.
Right.
If you want, so you can pick two of the three, and that I think helps kind of break you out of that like mentality of trying to get it perfect. You go, okay, like what's most important to me? And we're going to lean into those things.
Yeah.
And then the other stuff can just fall in the bucket of the third.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more people, I know that that is a very common like project management tool, but I also think if people were to truly use that in many aspects of their life and try to reframe things in that way, you start making decisions that are not so much on a whim or like spur of the moment. It just allows you to kind of approach the problem from a different direction that may feel a little bit more controllable.
I mean, when I'm planning a vacation, I want all three. I mean, I'm hard to please. Like, I want the lowest cost. I want to do the most, and I want it to be the best experience I've ever had. And that's just unrealistic.
Well, and I mean, just as we're wrapping up here, we want to be super clear. We're not telling people to stop caring, that you have to forego things. What we really want to get this across is that maybe there's a way to care without suffering and putting ourselves through these hamster wheels, if you will, trying to seek professionalism.
Yeah. Absolutely. Like chasing perfect is a stress response. So we need to understand that. And then once you can see that you're doing it, you are in control. You I don't know if that's the right phrasing here. But once you see that, you put yourself back in the driver's seat and you can
Yeah.
start choosing something different, even though it's uncomfortable. You can still pursue excellence, but without this like judgment and like setting yourself up to never get to experience the positives of all of the successes that you accomplish. And end up like not just falling down after you've run such a long marathon from burnout and exhaustion. The whole point is to enjoy the journey. It's the climb, as Miley would say, right?
That's right. That's right. So, as we have talked about perfectionism and trying to obtain perfection and understanding why our brains are operating in that way, we would love to hear from all of you. We shared name it to tame it, trade the perfect for effective, the 80% rule, the progress praise. What else are people using? Or how do you use these in your day-to-day life? I think that's, again, for me, for things to be made real, I love to hear the stories of the practice and the real life experiences that people go through. So you can share those with us. We'd love to hear from you. You can email us at connect@chrisandjenitm.com. You can call and leave a voicemail or text us at 940-278-8129.
Yes. Or you can find us on our socials. All of those are linked on our website at www.chrisandjenitm.com. We're on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, I don't know, TikTok, we're everywhere almost. ITM stands for in the morning, just in case you get confused. We didn't want you to type all that out. But like, follow, subscribe, comment, and we definitely want to hear from you. We want to interact with you. We want to engage with you. The whole point here is we're building a community and we want to be able to all come together and show up for each other, just like Chris and I have been able to show up for each other in life. So we want you to be a part of the community. Come join us.
Come join us.
Come join us. Which there's no Kool-Aid to drink. It's all supportive. Oh yeah, I forgot. I always do this where I'm like, hey, keep listening. But we want to talk about one of the episodes that we will be recording coming up. When will this come out, Chris? Like end of February, I think.
Yeah, let's just say a few weeks.
So you've got a little bit of time because Chris is headed on a trip. And so you have a little bit of time to read along with us.
That's okay. The book is Set Boundaries, Find Peace, a guide to reclaiming yourself. It is by Nedra Glover Tawwab. And the three of us have all read this book. And so we are going to all share things that we've learned. We want to have a discussion around it. And
we're making the producer show up and participate in the episode this time. We all three have pretty different takes on this experience. This was, by the way, homework that my therapist gave me, and I promptly turned around and gave that homework to these two other humans who I adore. And
there's those delegation skills that we heard about.
I was like, look, if I'm going to have to endure this, y'all are going to get to too. It really has been like an incredibly eye-opening experience, I think, for all three of us.
Yeah.
To go on this journey of boundaries. And we all three have pretty different takes on it. And so we would love for you to participate with us. So certainly no requirement to like read it in order to do that. But we've heard feedback from some of you before that when we're going to talk about a book that we've read, you would love to know ahead of time so you can read along with us and participate. So if you're interested, Set Boundaries, Find Peace. It is available as an audiobook. The author herself reads it. It is also just a book you can read, like Chris has in his hands. This an ebook. They have it in, if you're a library person, they have it like on the Libby app at most of the libraries as well. Both listened to it and then had to stop listening and read it.
So consume it however you would like.
However you would like. And until the next time that we are together, be kind to yourself, be kind to one another for sure, and make it a great week.
Bye.
Oh my God.
be kind, be
Be a
kind.
good human.